Welcome to Let's Eat. I'm your host, Emily, holistic health coach and self-proclaimed wellness enthusiast, here to meet you at the intersection of physical and mental health, the exact location where optimal wellness lies. This podcast is meant to explore all areas of mind and body wellness, designed to offer you the integrative knowledge, behavioral strategies, and mindset shifts necessary to uplevel your health and feel better today. We'll explore nutrition, sleep, movement, self-care and stress management, habits and routines, gut health, mental health, and more. I am so happy that you're here. Welcome to the table. Let's eat. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Eat. I am embarrassed to announce that this is the first episode that I've actually figured out the audio on GarageBand. Let me just say, I went into this process really not knowing what I was doing. And I think I do that a lot, but that is actually a strength of mine, is the fact that I go into a lot of things, especially as it relates to business, without knowing what to do, and then I just do it. I think a lot of times we wait until we think that we need to be ready, or I need to know more, I need to, have it figured out. But instead I just go and do and figure it out along the way. And so we are now 6 months into the podcast, and I'm finally seeing that my audio is appropriately set up. And I guess this hasn't been the case for the past 6 months. And I'm very excited. Now, I have also simultaneously in this past week been trying to figure out the video side of things for the podcast, which obviously for this episode, we are foregoing that because that is something else I need to tackle and figure out. But I had an issue with one of my cords for my microphone. I either sat on it or I don't know what happened, but it bent. Like the piece that goes into the mic, it bent. So my computer wasn't picking up my mic. So first I ordered a cord on Amazon, and Amazon, I love you. And 95% of the time you are reliable. But then there are always those times where it's like, oh, your order's running late. Your order's delayed. Oh, if it's not here by this time, you can get a refund. Right. So at this point I was like, well, I need a cord because I need to record this episode. So I requested a refund, and when you request a refund and it goes to your Amazon account, I think that they just say you don't need to return you don't need to return the item. You can just keep the item. I don't know if it's all returns is like that or what it is, but sometimes you get lucky and they're like, oh, just keep it. Okay, so then I went to Walmart and I was trying to find this specific cord, and I found a cord and it had a adapter, so you could do multiple different types of USB. So I was like, okay, perfect. Let's hope this is reliable. Let's hope this works. Got the cord, doesn't fit into my mic. Okay, just the way that the cord was designed, it wouldn't go into the mic because there was something in the way. So it just wasn't sitting right. Okay, so now I'm thinking, okay, can I return this? Because I've demolished the packaging, of course, right? Thinking that, oh yeah, I'm gonna keep this, and then you don't keep it. Then I ordered another one on Amazon, and then the first one I ordered and the second one I ordered came at the same time. So now I have three of these cords, and we're back in business. Now, I'm probably just going to keep those cords just for, God forbid, down the line, the same issue happens to me. But now it looks as though GarageBand is picking up the fact that I have this microphone, and in the past it wasn't. And I was like, well, maybe it's just supposed to be like that, just kind of overlooking it. And it wasn't supposed to be like that. So we're gonna we're gonna keep this in mind. But I'm hopeful that the audio's at appropriate volume. Maybe it's clearer. I think it is clearer, actually. I listened to some of this and it's actually much clearer. So I'm really excited for that. But we're back to it. We're back in business. There was a couple days where I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? If I don't have a mic, I can't record. And, all of those thoughts came to mind. But now I have 3 cords. So if anyone needs this cord, please let me know because I have plenty. I can spare one or two. I'm just listening back to you guys. I've been doing this all wrong. I'm over here thinking that I'm doing the audio right. I'm not at all. So thank you for the patience. The audio is almost too good now. It's like picking up all the things. So now I have to play around with it being too sensitive. I'm like half a foot away from the mic and I think it's like really picking up. So I got to figure this out, but we're getting there. Okay. So thank you for being a part of this journey. And yes, video interviews and solo episodes will be happening. I'm hopeful at some point next month. So stay tuned for that. I'm excited for that. That's going to be really, really fun to try and work out and figure out, and to just start to have the visual side of things when it comes to the podcast. Also, speaking of next month is National Wellness Month. And last year I hosted a free 4-week challenge for anyone who was interested in order to support their physical and mental health. So this year I'm doing the same. I'm really, really excited. It's really just an opportunity for you to invest in yourself over the course of 4 weeks. No one's holding you to anything. I might hold my clients to it. Okay, so if you're a client of mine, then I'll be on you for it. But it's more just an easy week to week. And maybe I got to take back the word easy. I think it maybe isn't the easiest per se, but it's a challenge. Okay. Challenge is not supposed to be easy. A challenge is a challenge, right? So it's going to be a challenge, but every single week it'll prompt you to invest in certain areas of your health, maybe add something in or reduce something. And by the end of the 4 weeks, it's really, meant for you to just build on week to week. And then by the end, hopefully you'll have some of these habits developed and you've created maybe more of a routine as it relates to your mental and physical health. So I think it's a fun way to maybe close out the summer, especially in celebration of National Wellness Month. So if you're interested, take a look on Instagram. I'll be sharing more details. If you follow me on Instagram, I'll be sharing info there. And if you're not following, my Instagram's linked in the show notes, so you can take a peek and keep updated there. And it'll be a lot of fun. And I'll be sharing more on my broadcast channel as the weeks unfold as more of like a real-time update, because I'll be doing the challenge alongside you. But I'm excited. I think it's just something fun to do. It's free. It's a couple weeks to spend some time focused on you, focusing on your health, and I'm looking forward to it. So stay tuned. Okay, you're probably like, Emily, shut up about the audio, but like I'm really shook by this. I'm really shook. And whenever I record through Zoom, when I have guests, the audio is always so much better. And I'm like, well, maybe I should start recording through Zoom on my solo episodes too, because I just noticed the audio is just crisper. It's just better. And now I'm realizing that this was the error. This was the issue all along. I can't get over it. I cannot get over it. But you're probably like, okay, just get on with the episode. Let's move on. So let's move on. Today, we're going to be talking about 5 reasons that you are not successful on your wellness journey. I had originally titled this episode 5 of the biggest mistakes that you're making on your wellness journey. And wow, that might be more clickbaity. I don't want to call them mistakes. Okay, I want to preface this episode. I'm just thinking about this now. I don't want to call them mistakes because I personally think that these are important parts of the journey. Having these moments of growth or having these experiences help contribute to creating sustainability. And I think it's almost a rite of passage for you to go through these parts of the process that include a lot of awareness building, because if not, it's just going to hinder your ability to be successful later on. You have to be willing to address these areas as parts of the process, first and foremost, before you create sustainable change. And you'll understand what I mean, and I'll touch on that as I move through the episode. But I just want to put that out there. Number one, to normalize it, okay? Because you're going to be like, oh my God, this is so me. And it's like, yeah, it's most people. It's most people who are navigating these experiences over the course of their own journeys and then making adjustments and then seeing that withstand for years and years to come, right? That's what the difference is between a lifestyle and just a temporary fix or a temporary change. It's going through the motions, going through these steps, reinforcing, which is a massive part of the work that I do with clients. Ask any one of my clients and they'll tell you right off the bat, yes, Emily is huge on mindset. Emily is huge on addressing these things because it's embedded in the framework of making any behavioral change is looking at what your thoughts and what your mindset looks like in relation to making said change. If those don't align, then inevitably there's going to be dissonance. Inevitably there's going to be more challenge in creating sustainable change. And that's what we all want, right? We want sustainable change. We want to feel better. We want to see results. And in order to do that, you have to look here first, either first or down the road, right? It's up to you on how you want to go about it. So our first topic of conversation has to do with all or nothing thinking. Now, you're probably exhausted by this topic, okay? Because I feel like I bring it up everywhere. I bring it up on TikTok. I bring it up on Instagram. I bring it up with clients. I've brought it up on the podcast before. But I'm telling you, this is so important, okay? It is so important that we call this out and we're cognizant of when it's showing up for you so that you can make appropriate change and build the awareness around its presence, because I'm not saying we're going to get rid of it. I'm not saying that we're going to suddenly wake up tomorrow and not have this cognitive distortion, because guess what? You are a human being. But what I do intend on encouraging you with is that you build awareness around it happening for you so that you can then respond differently to that, okay? One of the most valuable things that we can take with us across the course of our lives is we cannot control the thoughts that come to our mind. Thoughts are automatic. This is something I probably said thousands and thousands and thousands of times when I was a therapist, okay? We cannot control the thoughts that come to our mind. All we can do is notice that they are present, okay? So build our awareness around their presence and respond to the thought itself. Reframe it, examine it, question it, call it into question, put it on trial is one way of putting it. And really understand, okay, is this thought rational? Is it helpful? What is this thought, what is this thought doing as a result, or what is this thought doing to my emotions and then my subsequent behaviors as a result of that? Okay, that is all we can really do. And that skill is something that none of us are taught. Okay, we're not taught this at all. This is something that should be taught starting at day one. Because think about how much our thoughts impact how we see the world, impact how we see ourselves, impact our actions, impact how we feel. And the truth of the matter is, thoughts are not facts. Thoughts are just thoughts. And my thoughts are different than your thoughts. We could be looking at the same situation, have completely different interpretations and opinions on the situation. So with that said, think about how that impacts how we feel and how we operate. So when it comes to all or nothing thinking, this is what we call a cognitive distortion. If you're familiar with cognitive behavior therapy, then you know what this is about. Cognitive distortions are essentially exactly what that sounds like. They are distortions in our cognitions. Okay, our cognitions are our thoughts. Sometimes they're called unhelpful thought patterns, irrational thinking patterns. There's a variation of different names that can be used to describe these. And like I said, as a human being, they are common. They are a part of being a human. And all we can do as a result of having these thoughts is respond to them in a different way. So when it comes to all or nothing thinking, this is one of the primary thought patterns that I see with clients around their nutrition and diet and movement, okay? It's that New Year's resolution way of thought where it's like, I have to get to the gym X amount of times this week. I have to, eat clean, quote unquote, for the whole entire week. I can have a cheat meal on the weekend, if that, right? And if I don't meet that expectation, then why bother? Okay, then I'm giving up. Then I failed. That is classic. That's classic all or nothing thinking, right? Now, raise your hand. And I see you. I do see you. Raise your hand if this is you. Raise your hand if you've been there. Okay, like I'm raising my hand. I'm raising both hands. Because I've been there too, right? We've all been there. But let's think about how productive that is. Let's think about how sustainable that was for you. Because then what happens in 2 weeks? What happens in 3 weeks? January 17th, I think, is the day that most people give up on their resolutions. And that's almost 3 weeks. So, that's pretty impressive, that people even make it that long with this way of thought, right? How problematic that is and how inhibitory that is on our ability to move forward when we get so discouraged by one quote unquote mess up or one failure, quote unquote, right? And then that keeps us from even moving forward. That keeps us from trying again. And then what happens? Then we abandon ship. I'll try again next year. Maybe I'll try again Monday. I'll try again another day. And then that falls to the wayside and we never actually do anything. Right? And then next year we try again. It's the same cycle over and over again. And this cycle can happen not just in January, but for me, it was happening over the course of the whole year. There was like this cycle that was taking place that would resemble that New Year's resolution, experience, but it was coming up multiple times over the course of the year. And then we try again. Oh, I really got to get back to it. I really got to start exercising again. I really got to do this. I really got to do that. And then the cycle continues. Okay. So when this all or nothing thinking comes up for you, one of the best things that we can do first is take note that it's happening. Because once you can see it happening in real time and really pay attention to either patterns or the frequency with which it's happening, okay? That can be the start to a complete transformation of how you respond to it in real time. And now, this is not meant to say that it's going to happen overnight. Building awareness, it takes time. So many of us are unaware. You cannot change anything without awareness, okay? This is a hard truth, but an important truth. We cannot change something if we are not aware that it's a problem. Am I right? We cannot change something if we are not aware that it's a problem. If you are not aware that something is a problem, then of course you're not going to change it because you don't know that it's a problem. It's like the stages of change when it comes to addiction recovery. The stages of change are the trans-theoretical model. Am I saying that right? I think I'm saying that right. Talks about these stages of change where you move through the stages of change based on your readiness and willingness to make a change. But the first stage of change is an unawareness that there is a problem. So it's when someone says, oh, I don't have a problem. I can control my drinking. I can control my drug use. I can control my gambling, whatever. And there's just this decision, this mental block around this is disruptive to my life, to my relationships, and so forth. And there's an unwillingness to make a change because of the fact that you are not aware that it's a problem. Now, the second step is accepting that you have a problem, right? First step in making a change is accepting you have a problem or acknowledging you have a problem. And that's the same thing here, right? Building the awareness around when does this come up for me? How frequently? What do I do in response to it, right? Understanding yourself with that whole thought process, that in and of itself is first and foremost, right? That doesn't even include any kind of change. It's just bringing your conscious awareness to the fact that these thoughts are coming up for me. So I need to be aware that that's prevalent for me, that's happening for me, and now I can actually do something about it to make a change. And I think the hardest part is it's so microscopic. So it's hard for us in the day-to-day when we're on autopilot to notice, especially when these are thoughts that have been happening for years, maybe even decades, that they're so ingrained in us, that they're so just part of how we operate that we don't even realize that they're there. Okay? So I really want to be with the fact that this does take some time, and it takes some introspection to kind of pull these out. But once you do, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I was doing this. I can't believe this was happening. And it was really driving my, my ability to be successful in any of these changes, because of the fact that it was just happening in real time on its own, right? And I wasn't even maybe consciously aware that it was taking place. Okay. So first and foremost is building your awareness. And this can be through journaling. This could just be jotting down notes in your notes app on your phone. It could be a number of things, right? Like just building that conscious awareness around patterns, or, like I said before, like frequency of which it's happening, and really kind of just tuning in. That to me is like one of the most powerful things that we can do, especially as it relates to nutrition and lifestyle. Now, this can go many levels deeper, and it can be much more like clinical and therapeutic in nature, where it's like, thoughts you're having about your self-worth, or just negative thoughts, right? Having negative thoughts about you, your relationship, your job. Well, this can go many layers deeper, but I'm really sticking to, those are not healthy either, right? When we start to have these negative thought patterns, what that can do to our stress levels, and what we know about the mind-body connection. But for the sake of this conversation, this is just about your relationship with movement and nutrition and so forth. Being aware of how these thought patterns, this all or nothing thinking, can really result in a unhealthful cycle of trying and failing, quote unquote, and then abandoning ship entirely. So when it comes to addressing cognitive distortions like all or nothing thinking, like I said, you first have to be aware that they're happening. And then in response, let's give an example, right? Having the mentality of, I'm going to eat clean. And I use that phrase with a lot of resistance, because I really don't like that. But if I'm going to eat clean, quote unquote, for the whole entire week and have that expectation, okay, and I have to be 100% committed to this nutritional approach, and then the day comes where I choose something that's off my plan, that's likely where you'll see those all or nothing thoughts start to show up. As soon as that poor nutritional choice happens, maybe that's where you say, okay, well, why bother? And maybe you don't want to give up entirely. Maybe it's not that you want to give up entirely, but maybe, one morning you chose to get Starbucks and that wasn't part of the plan. So now you're just saying, well, to heck with the rest of the day. I might as well just eat whatever I want because I've already messed up breakfast. Okay, so this can be on varying degrees. It can be the all or nothing thinking of like, to heck with all this, I'm just not doing anything anymore. And it could also be on a more microscopic level where you just decide your next meal is going to be less nutrient dense because you quote unquote messed up for breakfast. And now you're just kind of justifying subsequent meals because of what happened. Okay. In response to that thought, in response to that unhelpful thought that's driving your emotions, maybe it's feelings of discouragement, maybe you're feeling disheartened, maybe you're feeling frustrated, maybe you're feeling guilt, shame. The emotions that can come up around this vary depending on who you are and you specifically. Whatever those thoughts look like will then generate maybe particular emotions, okay? And I won't lie, I'll say there's like a caveat here too, where it's like, if you start to feel poorly about your choice, a lot of people are then reaching for food as comfort. I see this so often. Emotional eating is so common. It's also so normalized in our culture. So that can really create this vicious cycle where it's like, okay, I'm feeling a certain way about a poor choice I've made. So now I'm going to reach for more comfort food or more, maybe lesser healthful food as a means of comforting that emotion. And then we just continue to spiral into this guilt, shame, using food as coping cycle. And that's no good either, right? So in that moment, you can make the choice of, okay, let me just take a deep breath. Breath is one of the best things that we can incorporate here. Because in the midst of emotion that's coming from that thought, we can infuse some of that moment with some logic, right? in dialectical behavior therapy, we talk about our wise mind and we talk about the emotional mind, and really finding that middle ground in your wise mind is where we want to be, right? Making choices in the space of our wise mind, where it's acknowledgement of the emotion, right? I'm feeling this. And then also infusing those moments with some logic. And more often, this is used with people who are using self-harm, dealing with some sort of disordered eating or eating disorder, in addiction, and so forth, right? So you're putting you're putting a space between the impulse and the action. I won't get further into that because that could be a whole episode on its own. But for this specific example, right, it's acknowledgement, okay, what are my choices? What are my choices here? I could just autopilot go and reach for whatever the heck I want for lunch. Now, I want to also call into question the fact that, physiologically, right, our blood sugar might be out of whack. Maybe we didn't sleep well last night. There's a bunch of different things that could also make it harder for us to make a more healthful choice because of the fact that maybe we started our day the way we did with the donut, the frappuccino, the this, that, the other thing, whatever it is. But I want to just simply look at this through the lens of cognition. Okay, so when those thoughts come up for us, well, why bother? To heck with the rest of the day. We have to be aware of those thoughts happening, right? What did I say before? Awareness is key. Awareness is the key to self-transformation. And then as a result of that, we can choose different actions accordingly. And maybe you sit there and say, okay, what are my actions here? What are my choices here? I could do this, I could do that, I could do this, I could do that, right? Rattle them off, figure them out, and then decide, okay, what most aligns with the goals that I have. Is this a rational thought to be thinking, well, to heck with the rest of the day, why bother? It's not going to matter. Because I'm here to tell you it's going to matter. It can matter, right? Making a more healthful choice for lunch can allow you to, I don't want to use the word get back on track necessarily, but it can allow you to just move forward. Because if you think about it, if we're thinking about it more in a more concrete way, if you continue to make poor choices over the course of the day, not only is that going to make you feel poorly, likely, right? Because you're going to continue in that guilt, shame cycle, but also you'll notice maybe your symptoms start to become a little more intense, whatever that looks like, digestive symptoms, neurological symptoms, whatever the case is, based on the food that you're eating. Your sleep might be impacted, right? You might not feel the energy to exercise. You might not feel the energy to socialize, whatever it is, right? Like there's a number of fill in the blanks there, but that can then perpetuate. Because then if you're not sleeping well, then maybe you wake up the next day, you're feeling exhausted. That's going to impact your hunger hormones. That's going to impact your cravings. It's going to impact how you feel. So then maybe you're more susceptible, more vulnerable to making a poor choice come breakfast. And then the cycle continues, okay? These are all just potentials, right? I'm not saying this is exactly what's going to happen, right? But I want you to really be with those moments, okay? I want to be sure I get to every other topic I want to cover today, but really being with those moments and infusing it with rationality and logic. And I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, okay? You might have to use these moments to learn, oh yeah, that didn't work out so well last time. I said to heck with this, I tried to do this, and I still chose a poor option, and look how it turned out the rest of the day, right? It wasn't feeling good, fill in the blank, you know the drill, okay? So I want you to really consider this. I want you to really consider it. I want you to consider its relevance. It takes time, but I'm telling you, this process is going to be so valuable to creating sustainability in your choices and in your lifestyle, because you're really looking closely at what are my thoughts doing to create sustainable change? What are my thoughts doing to detract from sustainable change? Are my thoughts rational? Are they helpful? Are they, really charged with emotion, right? Like really look at them closer and understand their influence. And that can be one of the most powerful things that we do in life as it relates to any thought that we're having, bringing more attention and more mindfulness to it, but also as it relates to making a lifestyle change. Okay. So I want to leave this here, but please let me know if this is an area that you would like support in, because this is one of the most powerful things that you can do as it relates to making a change. expectation of making a behavioral change without looking at some of these areas of resistance that can cause us to fall short, that can cause us to abandon ship, that can cause us to engage in this cycle, it's futile. It is futile. You have to be willing to look here too, because otherwise you're going to continue to engage in the yo-yo dieting and beating yourself up and blaming yourself and feeling discouraged, impacting the way you see yourself, impacting the way you see your ability to get healthy. And that's no good, right? That will be a lifelong painful journey because of how hard it will be for you to move past it if you don't have these tools. Okay. So please let me know. I'm here. I want to support you. And let's move on to number 2. Okay. So the next topic I want to cover has to do with wanting to be at step 100 when you're only at step 1. Now, I mean this in the sense of this really embodies my philosophy when it comes to working with clients, and that is meet yourself where you are and take an inch. So think about that. When we really get clear on where we are in this process, whatever your journey looks like, whatever your health goals are, when we're able to really define that and identify that for ourselves, then we can make the most appropriate, most effective next step. We can take that next step that may simply just be 1/2 of an inch. That may just be 1 inch. That may just be 1/4 of an inch, right? Think about it in regards to the initial way I presented it, right? If you're at step 1 and you think you're going to step 100 overnight or in a week or in 2 weeks, how do we think that's going to work out for us? Realistically, if you can only take 1 step at a time, or you can only take a 1/2 step at a time, or whatever the case is, how realistic is it that you're going to end up at step 100? That is not realistic, okay? And just as it's not realistic to do that, it's also not realistic that you're just going to go step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. There might be days where you're going to step 10 and you end up staying at step 9. Or you get to step 36 and then maybe there's a couple weeks where you're, between step 34 and 36, right? Where you maybe take a few steps back given whatever it is that's going on, right? I'd encourage you to really just get clear and honest with yourself, because this takes honesty, this takes patience, to really define what that looks like for you so that you can be most successful in progressing at a pace that's realistic, that's sustainable, and will get you to the place that you want to be quicker, instead of I'm rushing to step 100 and every single time I try to reach for step 100, I'm back to square one. And then you push for step 100, and then you're back to square one. As opposed to just making those gradual changes and choices over the course of, 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and allowing that process to bring with it growth, right? Because alongside these maybe behavioral changes you're making, you're also learning a lot about yourself. You're learning about what works and what doesn't work. You're learning about, your thoughts, okay, like we said before. So I know that there is an eagerness and an urgency in our culture to make changes overnight, to see change overnight. We want the quick fix, but I'm here to break the news to you, which I think you already know. You have to meet yourself where you are and just take an inch from there and take the steps as they unfold, as opposed to the expectation that you're going to create some sort of, incredible change in a matter of a couple days or a couple weeks, especially when it comes to like a healing journey, even a weight loss journey too. Okay. So meet yourself where you are, take an inch, be patient with yourself, give yourself grace. It will happen. It just takes time. Now, this next one I think is exceptionally relevant because of how culturally driven this is. And that is, we look at food as calories instead of the nourishment that it's bringing. Okay. This is a massive piece of my work with clients, especially clients who have spent a large portion of their lives focused on calories, because it really does take mental rewiring for us to pay attention to food in ways that's different than how we've previously been taught. Right? Like if we are so focused on food as calories and we're not aware of the nutritional value of fiber, fat, protein, of the composition of the food itself, as opposed to strictly looking at it as calories, we're missing out on such valuable parts of the food that could actually then help us dictate what foods we want to eat and what those that we don't. Now, if we're focused solely on calories, let's like really go to the extreme with this. If we're focused only on calories, then we're going to say, okay, yeah, well, a can of Coca-Cola has 250 calories and so does half an avocado. And this is coming from a real experience I had with a client. Okay, so let's think about that. A can of Coca-Cola has 250 calories, and don't quote me on that because I don't know if that's actually the case, but for this example, we'll just go with it. And then an avocado has 250 calories. So if we're putting this in kind of like a calorie tracker or we're tracking our calories, then it's the same, right? It is the same if we're looking at something that's 250, 250. Those are equal. Now, if we break it down in terms of what those two foods are bringing to the body, and from a health perspective, they are night and day. They are literally night and day. One is loaded with essential nutrition, essential minerals, fat. I mean, it's loaded with nutritional density versus a can of Coca-Cola, which is bringing us chemicals and sugar. Okay, still equal in calories, but not created equal. Okay, so that's just a very simple example, but I think this whole low-cal movement is really problematic because in lieu of those calories, companies are putting ingredients into this food to create it as being low-cal, but also being appetizing, right? So why would they market something that doesn't taste good? That's just... that's silly, right? No one's going to buy it. So they have to create a food that is both low calorie and still tastes good. And that requires using synthetic ingredients. That requires using things that are maybe man-made, that are devoid of nutrition, that are disruptive to our body, that trigger inflammation and more. Okay, so I want you to really understand how maybe this mentality plays out for you and how it's relevant to you, because this might be something that you have just developed over the years. Maybe this is how you were taught. Maybe this is how you've dieted in the past. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with being aware of your calorie intake, especially if you're looking to achieve a calorie deficit. But I also want you to start to educate yourself on the nutritional value of food, because I think, number one, it gives you a whole new level of appreciation for it. I shared this on Instagram the other day where, I made a pesto that was loaded with omega-3 fatty acids. It had, what kind of greens were in there? Either dandelion greens, I think, which are killer for your liver, your detox. There's, lots of fiber in it. So that's good for your gut health, good for your blood sugar. And how fun is it to look at food in that way? Like, this is bringing so much value. This one recipe is bringing so much value to my body in this way. Through all of these, through all of these ingredients, it's supporting my body in its entirety, right? And if we didn't know anything about it, we just say, oh, it's just pesto. It's just pesto and who cares, But when you really can start to generate this level of appreciation for the food that you're eating and really, up level it to be supportive of all of these different processes and organ systems and so forth, food just becomes something so much more than just calories. Okay. And that's really like my biggest mission when it comes to clients is empowering them in this way so that they understand like why it's so important for us to incorporate these real whole foods, because of the value it's bringing the body. Okay. So food is calories versus food is nourishment, really understanding how both of those are playing out. I think you will find that you will be more sustainable in your wellness and your health when you start to really understand food in that way. Food is nourishment. Food is full. Oh my gosh. Food as fuel. Versus how many calories are here. I think that distracts us from like what it means to properly fuel and nourishment. And I think you will organically gravitate towards the foods that are nutrient dense more often than not, because now you know, wow, this is really bringing so much benefit to my health, to my body, to my hormones, to my gut health and more. And that's what's going to help me feel good. That's what's going to help me to reduce my symptoms, reduce inflammation and more, versus how many calories are here. Okay. Last time I checked, that wasn't totally relevant. Okay. Keep this in mind. The next order of business is thinking that there should be one specific diet or label on how to eat. Now, I will not deny that everyone's different and everyone's, biochemistry is different. Everyone's genetic makeup is different. So there may be certain diets that are more appropriate for some, and I encourage you to find what works for you. But I really encourage you to stay away from putting a label on how you eat. Okay. I operate by the mentality and philosophy that real whole foods is the name of our game. Okay. And I wouldn't even qualify that as a label. I would just say that's how we're meant to eat. Okay. We're meant to eat real whole foods. That's not a label. That's not a trend. That's simply how we as human beings are meant to eat. Okay. Period. No room for arguing. But within that umbrella, I think there are some foods that we maybe digest better. Maybe, I am maybe more sensitive to certain foods than others. Maybe I need to avoid, corn, or I need to avoid maybe these more eggs, maybe whatever, right? Like whatever the case is, maybe I personally have to address that on a, food sensitivity level or on my gut health, or maybe certain foods I just prefer over others. Just because that's how we are as humans. We have different tastes and preferences. But at the end of the day, we are all meant to be eating real whole foods. No one was born on this earth, and no one's genetic makeup, no one's physiology said, yes, we should be eating man-made food-like substances, processed, ultra-processed foods. There's no one on this earth that is wired that way. Okay, it's very disruptive to our ability to function and our health and our body and homeostasis and all that. So instead of trying to adopt a certain diet, which I think there's a tendency for us to do that because we want guidelines. A lot of us are like, well, I eat paleo, or I eat Whole30, or I eat vegan, or I eat fill in the blank, keto, right? And a lot of us want those labels to feel like we have guidelines and boundaries. I think as humans, we like structure in that way. We like to know this is what I'm allowed to eat and this is what I'm not allowed to eat. And I think that is really harmful, because this brings us back to that all or nothing thinking. Because if we're then only eating the foods that we're quote unquote allowed to eat, and then we have a food that we're not allowed to eat, how does that then dictate our next choice? Or what does that say about us? Well, I ate a food that's off limits. I ate a food that's bad, or that's not healthy, or that's, whatever. And that can be really harmful to the way we see ourselves, to our relationship with food, and more. Okay. So I would discourage you from attaching a label. I would encourage you to be a little bit more fluid. And while, like I said, there can be a tendency for us like, oh, what diet works best for you? Oh, well, so-and-so lost a lot of weight on this diet, so I'm going to try this. Or, I think at the end of the day, if you're fueling your body properly, if you are giving your body what it needs, weight loss and healing will come as a result of that, because you're honoring your body's natural, makeup. You're honoring your body's natural biology, physiology, by giving it what it needs, by restoring balance, by reducing inflammation. So all of these goals that you have for yourself are achievable through restoring balance and healing in the body. And it doesn't require going on some crazy fad diet in order to do that. All right. I hope that this makes sense. I would encourage you just to really focus on real whole foods and keep away from the tendency to put a label on it, because I think it can become restrictive in that way, and that can make us feel maybe a little claustrophobic. I think too, think about it. When we're told don't do this or don't eat this, we want it more. It's like telling a toddler, I've said this many times before, don't go play on that broken, swing set, and they want to go play on it. Right? It's the same thing with us. The more I tell you, don't eat this, the more you're going to think about it, the more you're going to want it. So I think that can really play into this, and that can really heighten the pressure around staying good I was good this weekend, or all that language, right? Which that isn't even a topic I'm covering here, but putting good and bad on food, morality around food, also something we need to address. Okay, that's a big mindset shift. I ate something good. I ate something bad, right? Putting this good and bad and these labels on food is really then impacting the way we see ourselves. Because if I was bad this weekend, how many times have we heard that, or have we said that? Oh, I was so bad this weekend. No, you weren't. No, you weren't. I'm going to call it as it is. No, you were not. You were not bad. Nor was the food that you ate. Maybe it was lesser healthful. Maybe it wasn't as nutrient dense as you could have been eating, but it is not bad. And it's also not good when you are, oh, I ate salads all weekend long. I was so good. I behaved. This is a really big issue I see with clients. And I am very quick to interject with that vocabulary of like, no, there's no morality around food. And that seriously takes some rewiring, right? That takes rewiring for us to adjust that language, because it's so common for us to use those terms and then, feel badly about ourselves when we make poor choices. And there's no room for progress there. Okay. When we start to really beat ourselves up about being good or being bad, that really is something that needs to be addressed. Okay. So bring attention to your language there. Bring attention to how you're seeing food. Bring attention to how you label it as good and bad. Now I'm off on a tangent, but this is an important topic too. Okay. And will likely cause you a harder time along your wellness journey if you continue to use these labels. Okay. So just keep this in mind. Okay. This last one is a big one. Okay. And it's going to take a lot of humility for you to look at yourself in the mirror and call yourself out when necessary. Okay. And maybe you don't need to call yourself out. Maybe I need to call you out. Maybe that's what you really need. But this one is all about making excuses as to why you are unable to apply yourself to the process, or just a general unwillingness to apply yourself. Okay. It can be so easy for us to make these surface level excuses as to why we can't successfully make a change. It can be so easy. Oh, I don't have time. It's too hard. It's too expensive. I'm just so busy. I'll worry about it in the fall. All of these excuses that can come up when in reality, none of them are legitimate, right? None of them are legitimate. And these excuses just become the narrative that we tell ourselves for years and years and years. And then what happens? We look back and we've continued to avoid getting into the gym. We've continued to avoid investing in our nutrition. We've continued to avoid, getting the blood work done, doing the thing, right? Change will not happen if we continue to create excuses for ourselves. And I don't want to say that every excuse is an excuse, right? Like, I think that there probably are valid reasons as to why certain people have trouble, or there's, just too many obstacles at this point in time. But even then, there are small things that can happen, that can be done, that can still create profound change, that don't require a lot of you, a lot of investment, a lot of money, a lot of, whatever the case is. Okay. I am hired and I am here to be your biggest support. But with that comes accountability. Okay. And if you're struggling with something, you're struggling with a goal, there's always room to rewire, to rework, to revisit the goals that you have for yourself, to try and make it a little bit more accessible, right? Like maybe we're at step 1 and the goal we set forth was a little bit too much of a stretch, right? Maybe it was like step 1 to step 5. Okay, that's fine. All good. Let's go back to square 1 and say what's step 2 or what's step 3 and define that for ourselves, right? That is so important that you were patient, because I think what happens is if we try once and then our life gets in the way, our responsibilities get in the way, or, whatever the case is, we just tend to tap out and we say, oh, it's too hard. It's too much. I can't do it. I'm not good at this. it's overwhelming. I don't know where to start or whatever, right? But if we just say, okay, maybe I just need to make some readjustments here. Maybe I just need to look at this a little bit differently. And you are patient with yourself in that way, you can actually proceed probably a lot more fluidly. And I think an issue too is I cannot make changes for you. I can support you. I can hold you accountable. I can give you strategies. So one of the biggest things is we have this victim mentality that tends to take over when we go to make a change, and we project the lack of success onto things that are outside of us instead of taking accountability. This one might be hard for some of us to hear. Okay. And that is a problem. Okay. That is a problem because immediately you are evading any responsibility for your lack of success or your lack of ability to make a change, which is easier for us to do as human beings than to just take responsibility ourselves. Right. And the worst part, and I'll be completely honest, is when that lack of responsibility becomes my responsibility, right? When people blame it on the person that is trying to guide them. Oh, well, they didn't help enough. They didn't give me enough of support. They didn't this, they didn't that. That will never work out in your favor because guess what? You're going to move on and you're going to continue to blame others. You're going to continue to blame things that are outside of you for the reason that you yourself cannot commit to a process. The second that you're able to say, okay, what is it that I'm doing? Because it seems I'm the common denominator here, right? And I'm saying this with so much support and empathy and taking it very gently because I have been there too. So I don't want to say that like I'm immune to this because I certainly have been there too. But this is what I see most commonly, and I saw it a lot with therapy, is you have to be willing to take accountability for yourself and be willing to say, yeah, I am not taking the action that I need to see change, right? Like I said before, there's that stages of change concept, and this is very clear here, right? Where are you in relation to this change? Can you take responsibility for the fact that like the only person that can make a change here is me? So I can do all I want to get help, to, read, to learn, but the only change that's going to be made is actually through action that I myself take. Okay. And this is something that I see a lot, especially when I'm first having conversations with clients or, along the journey. I'm a good read of people. I am very proud of that part of me. And I think that's a strength of mine is I can really read people very well. And I can see when excuses are being made. Okay. I can see it. Now I'm not going to call someone out. I'm going to call into question. Okay. So how can we address this next time? How can we look at this barrier? We'll call it a barrier. And what can we do to overcome it? Right? How could we have proceeded differently in order to prevent this quote unquote barrier from being a barrier? Right? And then we explore that. And then we see, okay, does this quote unquote barrier come up again? And again, and again, and again. And that can look very differently based on person to person. For me, I find like flakiness or unwillingness to do homework or unwillingness to commit to goals that they have for themselves, or, oh, I forgot, or, whatever the case is, like all of these kind of, levels of resistance to applying themselves are either fear of the change, a lack of readiness to make the change. Okay. And it's much deeper than just those surface level excuses, right? So I want to really spend time here, and I want you to really think, okay, how has this shown up for me? How has this been relevant? One client of mine comes to mind, and we only worked together for a couple weeks, but there was a lot of flakiness, a lot of last minute cancellations, a lot of I was too busy. I couldn't start this. I couldn't try this. I forgot I did. Time after time, week after week, it was some sort of excuse about how hard life was for her to make these things happen. And at one point, I just had to say, is this the right time for you to do this? Okay. Because oftentimes it's either genuinely just not a good time. I mean, personally, I think anytime is the right time to invest in your health. And like I said, there's a lot of things that you can do that don't require you to like overhaul your whole life to be healthful, to take care of yourself. But for this particular client, I had to just be honest, like, is this the right time for you to do this? Because it was clear that either she wasn't in a space where change could happen, right? Like she was not ready to invest in that change, which is not something that I can decide. That is something that you have to get to. You have to decide that the time is right. Okay. Or it just wasn't a priority for her, right? You will always make time for something that you find valuable. You will always make time for something that you prioritize. And if you do not prioritize your health, or there's some blockage there that's keeping you from making time, or, there's past experiences that are driving maybe how you feel about yourself. Am I worthy of making this change? I mean, I know I'm kind of all over here, but this is such a big piece to the puzzle. And that's where that resistance comes up, that I have to really kind of put on my detective glasses and look at things and say, okay, what is happening here that's causing this person to feel so resistant? Because as an average human being without awareness, there I go again, awareness, you're going to say, I just can't do it, or I just don't have time, or this is just too hard. These excuses can be the reason why we tap out and why we decide this is not for me, right? But what's the alternative? The alternative is staying the same. And most people who come to me don't want to stay the same. That's why they come to me, right? That's why they're here, to change, to feel better, to make a lifestyle change, okay? So I want you to really be honest with yourself and call yourself out, okay? Because when it comes to excuses, when it comes to committing to a process, when it comes to investing in the change, you have to be willing to take accountability for what you're doing to self-sabotage. I do have plans to record an episode in the coming weeks about self-sabotage, so stay tuned for that. But really be honest with yourself. What about this process is causing me such anxiety or stress or resistance? Am I putting forth, excuses that are really kind of meaningless or don't really have much to them? It's just my way of kind of evading and getting out of the situation or staying the same. Don't get me wrong. I think the most common theme here is having to make a change. We are humans. We like comfort zones. Okay. So you are not alone in being fearful of making a change. You're not alone in being afraid of getting out of a comfort zone or being uncomfortable, because making a change is uncomfortable, right? But you have to decide, okay, how am I going to push through this, through the support of a coach or a therapist or whomever, and still be able to be with that discomfort and also pursue the things I want to pursue for the sake of my mental, my physical health. Okay? Because both can exist at the same time. We can be uncomfortable, we can have discomfort, and we can still make a change. But as soon as someone feels that discomfort or senses discomfort, that's typically when we're like, oh, no, I don't want to do this, right? And then that can show up as excuses. Okay. So be willing to look at yourself, be willing to tune into these moments and get real with yourself. Okay. Yeah, I'm totally making excuses here, right? Hold yourself accountable. Okay. Be willing to, accept that this is a part of the growth process. This is part of the change process. And on the other side of this, you can make profound change in your life, but you have to first say, am I making excuses here? Am I ready to make this change? Do I see the value in making this change? That's something else. I can't make you see the value. I cannot make you see the value. I could say all day long how wonderful it is to invest in your mind and your body and your health. But if you do not see that, and unfortunately, a lot of times people have to hit rock bottom in order to make a change, okay? That's just the reality of it. Most people have to hit rock bottom before they actually say, okay, wait a second, something's got to change here. Okay. So if you are at that rock bottom and you're ready to make a change, I'm always here. Maybe you haven't gotten there yet. And maybe that's where you'll actually decide, yeah, okay, I can't keep living this way. Okay. But wherever you are in this process, in this journey, I call you to really kind of take accountability, take stock of where you are, what's coming up for you, what resistance is there, because this is going to lead you down a road of, repeating the same cycle if you're not looking at, okay, who am I blaming for my lack of progress? Who am I blaming for my lack of change? What excuses am I giving myself as to why this is too hard? Because if you look back, okay, you look back at the last year, it's like, oh, this isn't a good time for me to do this. I'm going to wait. All right. And then a couple weeks later, no, the weather's just getting nicer. There's just too much going on. I'll worry about it come the fall. Then the fall, school just started up again, and, there's just a lot happening, and I just don't have the time. I'll worry about it after the holidays. And then we get back into this vicious cycle of, just never actually doing it. Okay. So keep this in mind. Keep this on the forefront. Do some inner work, inner digging, introspection. If you want to talk about this further, please feel free to reach out, because this is a pivotal part of my work with clients. I know this last one kind of went all over the place, so I hope that you're following me, but I think it's just that manifestation of like making excuses and not taking accountability and that victim mentality and like all of that kind of molded into one that creates this difficulty in being successful. So I encourage you to consider this on your own and then take the necessary steps in order to make a change. So I'm hopeful that this was helpful and that this resonated with you, because I think that if it did resonate with you, these are some areas that you could consider, especially if you're having trouble along your journey. Okay, so keep that in mind. And if you need support, you know where to find me. You know I'm here. But when it comes to these specific concepts, I see them come up time and time again with clients. And it's interesting because you may have come into this episode thinking it was going to be like, oh, you're not eating enough of this, or you're not getting enough steps every day. But most of these are coming from like a mentality perspective. It's like a mindset shift that is required as you move through all of these concepts. It's nothing about what you're doing necessarily. It's about what your thoughts are saying and how you're seeing this process versus doing anything tangible. So this might be something that you never even considered. Maybe you didn't even ever think about this as relevant to whether or not you are successful. So keep all of this in mind. I appreciate you tuning in. Like I said, I hope it was helpful. I hope you learned a bunch. Maybe some struck a chord with you. Maybe they all struck a chord with you. I don't know. But I would love to hear your feedback if you have thoughts or questions or reflections of any kind, or if you just need support. I'd love to hear it all. Okay. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you all. And until next time, be well.